Orly, it is so nice to see you. And again, because we have already met, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, I am too. I can't wait to learn all about LinkedIn and your strategies because you are a guru and I just can't wait. I'm going to be asking you all sorts of fun questions. But before we dive in, can you share a little bit about your background and what led you to loving LinkedIn and their strategies?
So I really am, my focus is really brand building. And the way that I approach LinkedIn is really more from the perspective of brand. So what people don't understand is that LinkedIn is not a standalone. Like any other social media platform, it needs to be part of a whole brand experience. And so the mistake that a lot of people make is thinking that, oh, well, I'll just do this thing on LinkedIn and I don't have to worry about how it impacts anything else. But the reality is, if you're doing it right, you're going to be sending people to your website. And when they get to your website, and if there's not a family resemblance, it's just it kind of leaves people thinking, what exactly is this? And so the thing that what I have realized, because I've been a brand strategist for 25 years and I've worked with hundreds of startups. That's really my niche, is really helping startups scale and how to cut through the noise and get known quickly, build, you know, early adopters and get clear on who they are and why it matters and all of that good stuff. And LinkedIn is, that's the platform I spend my time on, because that's where every Fortune 500 company is represented there. There's something like 300 and I think is it 310 million monthly users, active monthly users. Um, and 4 out of 5 of those monthly users are the people making the decisions about, they're the decision makers. So if you're a B2B business, you need to be on there, but you need to be on there in a really in a conscious and informed way, because otherwise you're just noise. And I often talk to my clients about this idea that, the thing you don't want to do is stop the scroll. you know you want people to keep going, and when they get to the top, which is where, because we're in this culture where we are reading top to bottom and left to right, we start with the banner. So the banner is often an area that's completely underutilized. Most people know not to use the regular LinkedIn blue, that's just the generic. They understand that. But that's an opportunity to really help people understand what this is, right? It's kind of
Mhm.
like the mistake that people make is they try to tell you everything at every point. It's almost like they worry that, oh, if I don't tell you everything at every step, right? And it's actually the opposite, because as human beings, we are curious and we like to discover. And so this whole idea of,
Mhm.
don't tell me, help me discover, help me understand, but do it in a way that helps me kind of build step by step. So by the time I get to your about section, hopefully I've gone that far. See, a lot of times I don't even get there because the banner doesn't really interest me. And I get to your headline, and the headline's so generic, I have no idea what this is. So the key thing is, I want to know, who are you? Who needs you? What is it they get? And how do you transform their life?
So does that happen? Do those questions get answered in the banner and
Yeah.
in the about? Like, what are some key? Let's start with the banner, right? Because
Yeah,
we're
so the banner,
sort.
so I will tell you, like for me, and I'm kind of learning as I go, and I implement my own advice, right? So a lot
Yeah,
of times, how we give other people advice, and then it's like,
right.
never mind, I didn't do
Oh
this.
yes, guilty.
We all are, because we're too close to it. It's really hard, to do this for yourself. So
Mhm.
so I actually, and I actually started working with a LinkedIn coach just to help me to get, because again, coaches need coaches, And
Absolutely.
so one of the things I did is I changed my banner to be more about what is this thing. And so now it's, focus your brand. That's what I do. I make fuzzy clear, and everything that I talk about is around making fuzzy clear, getting focused, clarifying your message, helping you cut through the noise, because we are all, I like to use Times Square because that's the perfect storm of advertising. And so
Hmm.
I like to use this analogy that it's as if each of us is standing in the middle of Times Square trying to be heard, right? And the thing is that, as you know, there's that old adage of, you have to hear something 7 times before you even hear it. Now, forget remembering the message, right? This is just to hear it. And then it needs to be repeated over and over and over again in a consistent, succinct way that helps me quickly identify, oh, is this something that I need? Is this something that matters to me? And it's okay if it isn't. See, this is the
No.
other thing that I've learned from working, with all these startups and working with business leaders for now, close to 30 years. What I've learned is that, we are so worried about leaving people out. That's what leads to generic messaging. And as you know, if you talk to everyone, you engage with no one. That's especially true on LinkedIn. So on LinkedIn, I started using the phrase facilitator of light bulb moments, because at the end of the day, that's what I do. I help you get to your aha moment. And I've actually had people reach out to me just because of the headline. I've had people reach out to me because this whole fuzzy to clear, it means something to them. I am
Yeah.
not trying to reach everybody, and it's fine if it doesn't mean anything to you. There's plenty of work for everybody. So it's not about, oh my gosh, I'm leaving somebody out, which I think is a lot of times what people think. And it's really, I'm here to say one of the things, if you can remember anything from our conversation, that's not the goal. The goal is to let the very people who need you, who are your ideal customers, your ideal clients, they need to believe, they need to hear something in how you present yourself, whether it's on your website or on your social media platform of choice, that you get them, you understand what they're struggling with, and you have a solution.
So what I heard you say, well, you said a lot of things, but one of the things that stood out to me was you kind of have these cute little catchy phrases, right? So fuzzy to clear was one of them. And is that something that I think you said you had it in your headline. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I'm gonna push back here a little bit.
Go ahead.
It's not a cute, fun phrase. It's not meant to be cute and catchy. It's taken me 25 years to be able to say that I make fuzzy clear. I mean, I
Mhm.
say that because it's true. I can do
Right.
it faster than just about anybody else, and I can get you to that point. Literally, I mean, I have these strategy sessions, and even in the first one, I can help you identify who your ideal customer. I can help you do all that very quickly. So the phrases, they're catchy because you remember them,
Right.
but they're not coming out of thin air. They're coming out of years of experience,
Mhm.
and being able to finally plant my flag and say, this is my space. This is what I do. I'm not a marketing guru. I don't do PR. I'm not a social media manager. I understand social media. I can certainly help you build a social media strategy. But if you're looking for somebody who really understands every, comma and parens and everything around social media, that's not who I am. And the
Gotcha.
same thing with websites. I can help you with content development. I can help you identify, what is the user experience that you want to achieve. So, what I mean to tell you here is that whatever you come up with, it has to be rooted in something real, because people immediately sense when it's just something catchy and cute
Right.
but not real. And now I've got people saying to me, oh, you make my fuzzy clear. Oh, I need you to make my fuzzy clear. It's sort of caught on because it's something that every young business struggles with. I
Right.
don't know how to attract my ideal clients. So I built a whole process around how to come up with your elevator pitch. LinkedIn is an extension of that. Your website is an extension of all of that.
So is that something that you would put as your headline instead of the traditional, here are my credentials or what I
Oh,
do? It's instead of the credentials, what you're good at, what you really accomplished should be in
are you
that
talking?
headline.
So first of all, your credentials don't go in your headline. Your credentials are under education. They're in skills, and also, a lot of people really don't use recommendations enough, or really don't use them to their full advantage, which is to show how those credentials help people, right?
Mhm.
Credentials are, I mean, this is not, see, what people also don't understand is LinkedIn is not a resume. And I see this a lot in the about section. The about section is not a mini resume. The about section should have 4 sections. The first should be about, who are you, and who do you work with? Then there should be another section, which is really, and these are very short paragraphs, so 3 to 4 tops. And then there should be a paragraph that kind of shows you, right? Show me, don't tell me. Show me how this helps somebody. Like, give me an example. Like I talk about storytelling and making fuzzy clear for somebody who's a speaker, for instance, and they don't know how to cut through the noise of event planners who are looking for speakers. How do they break out of that? And so I
Mhm.
talk about, how that shows up, because it's one thing to say, well, here's what I do. What I'm more interested in as a potential buyer of your services is, what does that mean for me? Give me an example. And then I need to see the credentials. So the credentials are always at the end, because we assume that if you say these things, right, and this is kind of in a way counterintuitive, in a way that I think most people think about this. You don't start with your credentials, you start with what you can do. We assume you have the credentials to do it. So it's not, a lot of people use LinkedIn thinking that they're actually selling themselves, and that's not the goal of LinkedIn. The goal is to help the person who's looking for you find you, understand what you offer, value what you offer, and then get them to actually contact you in whatever way. So that's why you need a call to action, which I am amazed how few about sections even include a call to action. It's like, you've got me right here. If I'm reading this, this is the time. Connect, make it easy for me to schedule a discovery session with you. It's not like a feel good, hey, I'm really great, and learn more about me and go to my website. No one's going to do that. Right now, this is why I talk a lot about cutting through the noise, because we're being messaged at a rate of 12,000 messages a day. And that's on the low end. That's 4 million messages a year. 4 million.
That's a lot.
And to put that in perspective, in 1985, which was, that I know that was 40 years ago, but still, 1985, that number was 1,500. We've gone from 1,500 to 4 million. And as I said, I think it's probably closer to 5 million now,
Wow.
but even so, we're just overwhelmed. And so what that means is, on average, and this is also true on LinkedIn, you've got 6 seconds to get my attention, which is why wordy, lots of words, lots of stuff, no one's going to remember it. You want something that's going to catch somebody to say, oh, I want to learn more about it, which is really all you're doing. The headline is just meant to kind of tease me, right? Help me understand something about you. So I talk about making fuzzy clear specifically for people who are struggling with their messaging. They're struggling to attract their ideal clients and grow their business.
So you just talked about what a noisy world it is, right? In the digital world
Yes,
with everything. And we are getting bombarded left and right with ads, with content.
content.
So what type of content do we create that cuts through the noise and gets our audience's attention on LinkedIn?
Well, that's a it depends answer.
Okay. Of course.
Because everyone's business is different. So,
Right.
for me, my goal is to get people to understand that I know how to help them cut through the noise, but also, I'm a speaker, I'm an author, I'm looking for speaking opportunities. So the goal is really to kind of trifold, right? To show my expertise in the recommendations, which, these days people don't usually ask me for recommendations because I just say to them, go to my LinkedIn profile or go to my website and you'll read the recommendations. So, and they're very targeted to what it is I do. And so that's one thing. So recommendations are a way to sort of, I don't want to use the word brag, but it's more about validate what you do, but through the eyes of somebody who's actually worked with you or heard you speak or been at one of my workshops, those kinds of things. And then the headline is really meant to be, very short, very succinct. And it gives me like, it's like that 2-second, oh, I get what you do. And then my banner has this image of glasses, which are, kind of things are out of focus and then you see something in focus, because the whole idea is about focusing your brand to get clear.
Oh my gosh, that's so, I love that. I I love that. That's really, really interesting. So the content that you post really depends on who you're targeting. And I found it interesting, and I can relate to this, right? When you wear a couple different hats, you are a speaker and you're an author, and I do multiple things too. And I target different people depending on what that is. How do you optimize the profile? You just explained it so perfectly how to do that. But how do you do it when you wear a couple different hats?
Right. So here's the thing, people get, I'm always trying to tell people like, just, it's okay. Like you don't have to cover all the bases.
Yeah.
You need to choose, you need to choose like a story. You need to choose beginning, middle, and end. So how do you want to bring people into your brand? So for me, it's really about the outcome, which is making fuzzy clear. And then, the being an author and a speaker, those are ways that I kind of get my message out. So my first book, Ready Launch Brand, which was specifically about lean marketing for startups, that kind of cemented my expertise in that area, and that helped me kind of carve out, right? But I don't start with that. Like in a way, when you're a consultant, coach, thought leader, people expect that you have a book. People expect that you're a speaker. People expect that you do workshops or, have some kind of courses or events or what have you. So, that's not necessary it's not where I begin. I begin with the end result, the making fuzzy clear and what that means for my clients. And then the other things, which are the author, my books and my speaking, those just kind of reinforce that I'm a thought leader, that I've done things that, you can trust when I talk to you, because I have this expertise and I've been doing this a long time. And if you go on my website and you go to my press page and you see, 5 or 6 pages of where I've spoken and where I've been a guest on a podcast and, workshops that I've done, all those kinds of things. It's in a way, those kinds of things are just kind of given. Like I don't really have to call attention to those because people will find them.
Right. I love that. That makes so much sense. So you're talking and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm having a light bulb moment. Like you don't have to list everything. Like, why do I feel like you do? So thank you for saying that.
You're welcome.
So we know that social media is great, LinkedIn is great, but it really boils down to, after you cut through the noise, right? Like building meaningful relationships and not
Yeah.
just connections. Because I will tell you, the one thing I don't like about LinkedIn, and there's this battle with me and LinkedIn, right? I'm like, I see the value, and then I go over there for a little bit, and then I get all these connections of people I don't really know. They only want to pitch a product, or my email gets filled up, and then I get away from it, right? So how can you really build meaningful relationships and not just be one of these people that's just connecting to connect?
That's such a great question. Thank you for asking that. First of all, I look at LinkedIn as a relationship platform. That's why I saw the key is you need to engage on a regular basis. So these days I'm engaging on average twice a week, once a week about what I'm doing in the consulting world, and then the other the other day of the week are, I'm working on my second book, which is going to be the female guide for entrepreneurship. And as I'm building the book, I'm actually posting about it. And I will tell you that, and this is really, to answer your question, is it's all about engagement. So I did one on emotional intelligence, and this is where hashtags are really important. I use the hashtag emotional intelligence, which gets like, I don't know, 9 million hits or something. And that one post got 6,000 views.
Wow.
I only have 3,000 connections.
That's a
And
lot
not,
of connections, but not
like,
in comparison
but
to
not,
how many
yeah,
views.
but not 6,000. And I have
Yeah.
about 3,100 followers. So the other piece is, so the key to LinkedIn is this. First, you need an all-star profile. So that's the first thing I do. Build an all-star profile. Then we take a look at what are the topics that you're an expert on. Don't try to talk about everything. Focus on the things that you really not just know intimately, but can speak to from a different perspective, right? So I focus on everything to do with messaging, with startups, with brand. I don't veer into areas where, even though they are brand adjacent, it takes me off of my zone of genius, right? So you have to identify your zone of genius. And then I engage on other people's posts as well. It's not just so, and then what happens is when somebody engages on my post who's not a first connection, I go to their profile, and if they look like they might be an interesting person to chat with, I send them a connection request. And hey, saw that you engaged on my post, really appreciate it, took a look at your profile, thought we should connect. And then when people do connect, you have a couple of options. A lot of times I will just, as a first step, I'll send you an article. Here's an article. I wrote an article about something that I thought, given who you are. And again, I focus on startups. I focus on business leaders. I focus on solopreneurs, on coaches and speakers, authors. And so, I've done LinkedIn Lives. I've written articles. I have my book. And so I offer content. And that's the other thing. It's not just, I think, to answer I'm sort of backing back into your question. I think the reason that people get a lot of these sort of, pitch and, like sort of, pitch and connect kind of, or connect and pitch. And it's really just about selling you, is that you need enough content to start to get people to engage with your content. Once people engage with your content, you get known for being an expert in this one area, which is another reason why you want to focus on one or two topics. I have, I think, three topics. But what I have found is with this new book that I'm working on, because I've interviewed now almost 40 women around the country and the world, and to get their experience of what it's like to be a female founder, and their experience. I'm also then I'll post a quote from one of them, and I will tag them. You want to make sure that you're always tagging people so that you're bringing other people in, and that's how you start to build kind of awareness. The way this works is, first you have to build awareness. People have to know you exist. Once you build awareness, then you have to build loyalty. And the way you do that is this constant, content that's not about selling, right? Because a lot of times I think people get, and I get those requests all the time. And the way I respond is, oh, I'm curious, I'm wondering why you reached out to me. And then immediately they go into a pitch mode and I don't connect with them, or they don't respond. I don't connect with them either. But I give them I give them a chance to let me
Right.
know. A lot of times it's pretty obvious that they're just trying to,
Right. Yeah.
but what I find is, so once you build brand loyalty, then that leads to brand equity, which is when people think about messaging, when they think about making fuzzy clear, when they think about somebody that's going to help them cut through the noise, my hope is that they will think about me.
I love
That's
it.
that's the ultimate goal. Yeah.
That's like you just broke it all down. You broke it all down right
That's
there.
what I do, right? That's what I do.
You make fuzzy clear.
Make fuzzy clear.
Exactly. So, how can our listeners connect with you if they want to learn more about optimizing their LinkedIn or your books? Where can they find you?
Well, so they can go to my website, zeewybrands.com. They can actually read about my current book, Ready Launch Brand, on my website also, which is zeewybrands.com/books. And it also talks about my upcoming book and gives some feedback, some intel about that. They can go to LinkedIn at Orly Zeewy on LinkedIn. And if they want to check out my book, they can go to Amazon and just type in Ready Launch Brand book, and my book comes up.
Wonderful. And if you're listening, all of those links that she just said are in the show notes. So just scroll down and click on the link and connect with Orly. Orly, thank you so much for coming on today. This was wonderful. I've learned so much about LinkedIn, and you may have just inspired me to spend a little bit more time there.
Thank you. And thank you again for inviting me, Deanna. I really, really enjoyed our conversation.
Well, thank you. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week.